So here's my normal workflow for infrared photos. After I take a picture in the camera, I'll download it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import it into Lightroom. And part of the reason I do that is that I can kind of make some basic overall adjustments. It's hard to tell with the infrared camera what your perfect exposure is. You have to sort of manually adjust it, but sometimes you end up with things that are a little blown out like this, or a little bit too dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull down my whites and my highlights a little bit to try and maintain some detail in there. And I'll look at my histogram, and it actually says that was fine the way it was, but it just looks a little bright to me. So I'm pulling the whites down. The shadow areas seem fine, but this right in here is kind of dark, and I might pull that up just a little bit just to try and preserve some detail. Okay, I guess that's more of my blacks, so I'll pull that over just a little. So it's really a flat image, right? And it's probably best to have it flat to start with, just to be safe. And then when I color balance, it can do some wacky things. So I'm going to grab my color balance tool, and I'll either color balance to what I know to be neutral gray, being like pavement, or grass. And I think grass is usually going to be best, and it makes the grass kind of white. But I'll go ahead and I'll click on the pavement and see what that looks like. And that starts to make the trees almost bluish. So that could be kind of interesting. But now I'm losing detail in the highlights, right? So now this is where pulling the highlights down will probably be a good idea. I could pull my overall exposure down just a little bit, maybe, to kind of keep the detail in there. And I might pull my whites down even more because this patch of grass back here seems even brighter. So I mean, histogram wise, I'm good by what it looks like, but I'm just kind of judging the image with the histogram to kind of balance those two out. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to export it out. I'm not going to do any other major editing here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to channel swap in Photoshop. Right now it's kind of pink and orange, right? And so if we swap our red and our blue, we'll end up with, well, let's not say it's going to look normal, but it's a different look. So if you like this look, that's fine. That's great. Go with it. But what looks, how do I say it the right way? It looks closer to reality, but still not reality if we do a channel swap. All right, so I'm going to take it and I'm going to export it. And I'm going to just put it, let's see, on my desktop. I'm not going to resize it. I will rename it. Just so that I can find it easily. And we'll go ahead and export. It'll drop it in there. I'm going to go into Photoshop. I'm going to open, file, open. And there's my newer version. Okay, now's the fun part. Now's when a channel swap gets us interesting places. So I don't know if I've described this before, but infrared light bounces off of anything that has chlorophyll in it, right? So grass and trees become white, and other things are going to look closer to reality. Well, we'll see what we really think of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a channel mixer layer, adjustment layer on top here, and I'm going to go into blue, and I'm going to take blue from the actual blue values down to 0 and take red up. So it's basically making whatever was blue red, and I'm going to go to red, and I'm going to take anything that was red, take red down to 0, and make it 100% blue. So that creates a blue sky that, with some adjustment, looks like quote unquote reality. I'm probably going to need to add some contrast in here. So I'll make a curve, and I'll grab my little pointer tool, and I'll grab things that I think are too bright and pull them down. So these shadow areas can go a bit darker. You can see how the highlights here are still kind of getting lost and turning yellow, which we could always desaturate our yellow to fix that. So let me show you how to do that. We'll go into hue saturation. We can go, instead of in the master, we can go to yellows, and we can just pull the saturation on yellow down. That's going to make those things more white. And then I'm going to go back in my curve, though, and I might finesse a little bit. So I'm going to take maybe the white point and pull it down to be a little bit gray and add a little contrast by pulling out some of the highlights. Okay, so this is, I don't know what to say. It is more what most infrared photographers go for, where the sky is a deep, deep blue, like a bright sunny day. It is, however, still overexposed, unfortunately, a bit, which I can try and pull out some detail on, but it has better contrast overall. So let me show you what I might do to try and pull the detail back in the grass. I'm going to duplicate my background layer. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then Shadows, Highlights. And what this will let you do, by default, it's going to pull more detail out of the shadows, which interestingly is actually making the image look nice. But what I was going to do was I was going to pull detail in the highlights. So that's going to double up the values basically down here in the grass to get more of a texture in it. Now, if you go really far, this starts looking really muddy and gross and kind of like HDR, if you know what HDR looks like. So, you know, 30, 40 points is probably going to be good. Yeah, and I'll just turn that on and off so you can kind of compare the difference. And actually, I think it's getting to be too much. So the original, I think, it has a more hazy feel to it, which is very common for infrared and part of the aesthetic. And this is going too far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the opacity on that layer down so that it isn't as visible. And then the change is less dramatic. I think maybe 25% or something like that. It just pulls in a little bit of texture. It's particularly this patch here that I was looking at that just felt really off. So that's kind of the idea. And any infrared photo, everyone looks very different. What I have is a couple different, how do I say it the right way? They are filters that block visible light, but allow different spectrums of infrared light in. And so a lower number is something like 700 nanometer, I think is how it's measured, is closer to visible light, whereas 800 or 900 nanometers is much more infrared and going to look a little bit more surreal and wacky. And just for the fun of it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what this looks like if I put that. I could either do a hue saturation and just take out the color, right? Or if I really wanted to play with the values when I did it, I could do black and white. And I could, let's see if I go back into the high contrast. Ooh, high contrast blue looks really bad now. But maybe just green. Green's going to be closest to human vision, in which case this doesn't even really look that infrared anymore because the trees are just kind of, or the foliage is just kind of glowing like a bright sunny day. So maybe I did like that black or just hue saturation slider to the left. Mixed feelings. Anyway, but the idea is that, you know, you kind of make up what you think looks best for this because there is no exact formula of what it should look like. Different people edit their infrared photos differently. And it's sort of a, I don't know what to say. It's a specialty, and you know, it's more of a visual aesthetic, fine art aesthetic.